All right. Good evening, everybody. I hope you're doing very, very well. And let me adjust my screen just a little bit there. Um, trying to figure out if we've got a few folks. I see three eyeballs, at least, on my little monitor thing here that are showing who might be watching. So if you're watching, please let me know. See if I can put my chat up where I can see it. Yeah, let me know if you're watching so that I can um, figure it out and talk with you a little bit. But I am live tonight. We're going to conclude our discussion and teaching on the book of Esther, the story of Esther. And we have had a little bit of a start-stop going because of Thanksgiving and our Supper with Santa event, and so no apologies there. I wished I had timed it a little bit better so that we could maybe finish this and then start something else. But you know what? It is what it is, as they say. So we're going to make it work, and I think I've got a little review that will help us get back into the story of Esther and get going here in just a minute. So I see that the Knoxes are here. Glad to have you guys. And while I'm thinking about it, we will conclude next week. We'll do maybe a couple more of the minor prophets, Malachi, and then we'll be done. We will not have anything December 26th. No, probably not January the 2nd either. And then I'm not sure what we're going to do January 9th, but we're going to do something. So kind of working through that as we speak. So good to have the Taylors on here as well. You all you four particularly and others have been really consistent and regular, so that's helpful. I hope this has been a good thing to spend some time on. I've enjoyed it. And so anyway, we may have a few others join us here in a minute. We've probably had some people that have just plain old forgot that we're even doing this, or maybe they're just done. I don't know. It's okay. It's a busy time of year as well. So anyway, Guthrie is another one of our regulars. Glad to have you guys on here. Let's start with a prayer, and then we'll do a review of Esther up through Esther 6, and then we'll cover 7, 8, 9, and 10 is really short tonight, and see if we can make a couple of observations. The main thing is just this story is like who could have thought of all these details, connections, coincidences. This is a God story, so I love this story, and let's see if we can get back into the flow of it here in just a minute. All right, let's pray. Father, we thank you for today. Thank you for the blessings you've given us. Thank you for the hope, the love, the joy, the peace that comes through your Son Jesus. And thankful for all the good things going on at Kingwood. We're thankful for the good opportunities to serve and love on our community, to be with each other, to worship with each other this morning, to support and encourage each other. And we're thankful for this time where we could open up your word, and thankful for those that have been reading along some with the Bible readings, and if nothing else, just exploring different parts of the scriptures that maybe it's been a while since we focused on. And Father, I'm thankful for that. Thankful for everyone that's here tonight or that will be watching this later, and just pray for your Spirit to be on us and give us wisdom about how you work in our lives. And Father, again, we thank you for this day, and it's through Jesus we pray. Amen. All right, so let's do this. Let's begin our review of Esther. You see the little subtitle there, "For Such a Time as This." That was a well-known remark she made to Mordecai, and we'll address that here in just a second. But again, just a reminder of when did this story happen? And it is during the Persian Empire. So if you look on the timeline, if you go up from about 500 BC down there at the bottom, and the orange left to right line or thick, squares there. That's the nations that influence the south of the Holy Lands, the southern kingdom of Judah. And then the ones at the top, the lighter blue ones, are the ones that impacted the northern. You'll see Persian Empire listed in both. The Persian Empire conquered what the Babylonians had done, and we saw that during the story of Daniel. And then we're going to see that the Persians take over and have conscripted all of the people there as well, and distributed them among their kingdom to kind of, it's kind of a strategy, honestly, to use them as labor, but also to keep them separated so that they couldn't form any kind of allegiances or counterattacks or anything like that. It was to indoctrinate them into their culture and all those kinds of things. So it was a strategic, he says, move as well. But anyway, this is about when that happened. So during the Persian Empire and the exiles that we find this story. And so this is how it begins. This is kind of the review of Esther, to the point where we stopped, I believe. So the Persian king was Artaxerxes. He got angry with Vashti, and he basically, he'd called her out to parade her in front of all of these people at a party, and she said, "Nope, I'm not coming." And so he banished her. Well, he starts missing having companionship, and so he has a beauty contest with all of these different young women from all over the kingdom. And after the end of this, he finally chooses this beautiful young Jewish woman. Again, he's Persian, and her name is Esther, and he chooses her to be his queen. Now, the catch is he does not know she is Jewish. He doesn't know her nationality. He just thinks she's beautiful. And but she wins his favor and wins that opportunity. And Uncle Mordecai, I call him Uncle in the quotes because he's really more of a cousin or a father figure to her. But and he had been advising her through all of these things, and he had taken her in. She was an orphan, so he had taken her in when she was little. But there's kind of another situation going on with him. He refuses, as a devout Jew, to bow down to this new lead advisor for Artaxerxes named Haman. And Haman hated that. He got so angry he wanted Mordecai impaled on a pole. So that was his, he couldn't stop thinking about what he wanted to do to Mordecai. He hated him so much. And also because of that, he hated the Jewish people. And he wanted all of them exterminated. And so Mordecai finds out about this, and so he pleads with Queen Esther to prevent this massacre. So he basically approaches Esther and says, "Hey, don't think you're going to be spared. You're a Jew as well." Again, king doesn't know. Haman doesn't know. So you kind of have this setup for this story, and Mordecai's like, "Hey, you got to do something." And she's like, "I haven't been called to see the king in a while. Anybody who does that is putting their life in risk. He has to call you. You don't just approach him." And Mordecai says, "For such a time as this," basically, is maybe while you're in that position. Very well-known verse. Who knows? Is what he says. Who knows? But for such a time as this, you've been put in such a royal position to save your people. And so, which is exactly what God intended. So that's kind of what is going on. He pleads with her. She makes a very difficult, maybe, decision. And she risks angering the king, losing her life, and she approaches him. He extends the scepter and allows her to come forward. At that moment, she invites the king and Haman to a dinner party. And they come, and then at that dinner party, she asks them to another dinner party. Now, the one story that I've kind of left out of here that I realize might be helpful is that to kind of set up Haman's kind of what's going on in his mind at this time. He still hates Mordecai, hates the Jews. He had gotten the king to sign off on this plan to have a certain day where the Jews would be massacred. And that day is coming, and that's the whole thing. Esther's going to go in and try to prevent that. Well, again, don't forget how mad and how much he hates Mordecai. Well, there had been an incident previously in Esther where Mordecai had overheard a conspiracy theory against the king and had alerted the king, and they'd written this down in a book and said, Mordecai, notified the king, and these two rebels had been stopped and so forth. Well, the king has got insomnia one night, okay? Just so happens this happens about the same time as all this other. The king gets insomnia and he says, read me a book. Read me a book about all the great things that I've done about my kingdom. And so they pull out a section and they read the actual section where Mordecai's telling of the uncovering of this plot happens, and the king's like, "Oh yeah, I remember that." And I'm guessing this happened a lot. There's a lot of intrigue, but he was like, "Did we ever do anything for that guy?" No, we didn't. And so the next day he goes to work, and Haman comes bouncing in. Remember, he's kind of the king's advisor. King says, "Hey, Haman, I got an idea for you. What should we do for someone who spares the king's life and is, deserves a lot of honor, et cetera, et cetera?" Well, Haman thought he was talking about him. And so Haman goes, "I know what I would want. I would want to be paraded through the streets on one of your best horses, someone saying how great I am, etc." Well, the king goes, "That's a great idea, Haman. Why don't you do that for Mordecai?" So he realizes what is going on, and he has to do this. And he walks through the streets pulling the horse with Mordecai on top. Now, don't forget, Haman has instigated this plan to have Mordecai and all his people killed. Doesn't know about Esther, all this. So this is all going on. So Haman is just beside himself. Goes home, tells his family. They say, "Man, you are done." About that time, the end of chapter 6, the queen's people come and get Haman and say, "Hey, banquet time, let's go." So that's where we find ourselves now. Haman is just in a tizzy, realizing that the tables have kind of begun to turn, and he has no idea what's in store for him. So that's where we are now when we pick up Esther chapter 7, and they go to the second banquet. It's just going to get worse for him, it just is. So again, I want you to recall that one of the key applications of this is that the word God is not found in the book of Esther. Not sure why. His fingerprints are all over the story. And so as we read this, think about God's stories in our life, it's just very interesting to kind of apply this. All right, here we go. So the king and Haman went to Queen Esther's banquet, and as they were drinking wine on the second day, the king asked Queen Esther, "What's your petition?" In other words, what do you want? It's going to be given to you. What's your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be granted. Queen Esther answered, "If I have found favor with you, your majesty, if it pleases you, grant me my life. This is my petition. And spare my people. This is my request." So she finally comes out with, "Hey, look, I want you to save my life," right? Save the life of my people. "For I and my people have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated. If we had merely been sold as male and female slaves, I would have kept quiet, because no such distress would justify disturbing the king." She's got a very nice political way of honoring the king, right? She's using her words wisely. King Xerxes asked Queen Esther, "Who is he? Where is he, the man who's dared to do such a thing?" I mean, he's starting to get upset. Who's going to kill my queen? What are you talking about, right? Let me at him. I'm going to tear him limb from limb. Esther said, "Well, an adversary, an enemy." And I love the scriptures saying, "This vile Haman." And then the Haman was terrified before the king and queen. I mean, okay, so Haman has got to be just shaking at this point, because he's listening to this and she says, "Save me and my people." He doesn't know, remember, that she's a Jew. And then the king is getting mad. Haman's watching this, he's seeing, and then she points in my mind's eye, this vile Haman, right? You like how I did my finger right into the screen. This vile Haman is the one who's trying to kill me and my people. Oh man, can you imagine being Haman right now? You were on top of the world before this, and it has just gone downhill. It has just gone downhill fast. So the Haman was terrified before the king and queen, right? He realizes his place. The king gets up in a rage, leaves his wine, and went out into the palace garden. He's just fit to be tied. But Haman, realizing the king had already decided his fate, stays behind to beg Queen Esther for his life. I mean, that's not a bad idea. Please, I'm wrong. I mean, he's begging. Please don't have me executed. I'll do whatever. I mean, I can only imagine the pleading. But there's something that happens here, right? Let's see if I can get the to turn. So just as the king returns from the palace garden to the banquet hall, Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was reclining. Oh my goodness. And the king exclaimed, "Will he even molest the queen while she's with me in the house?" And as soon as the word left the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. I mean, again, get this picture. Haman is begging for his life and trips or falls where Queen Esther is reclining. Remember that at feasts they would have reclined to eat. It was just kind of the luxurious thing to do, you know. And man, that when he walks in, it looks like Haman is attacking Esther, you know, sexually. He has decided to, and the king is mad, and then he takes it to off the charts level. They cover Haman's face. They put something over his. He's gone. Gone. Now, just like that, Haman went from top advisor to gone. Now, let's see what else happens. There's a few more details here to be figured out. So, then Harbona, one of the eunuchs attending the king, said, and this is like, I got an idea. There's a pole reaching to a height of 50 cubits, okay, that stands by Haman's house. He actually had it set up for Mordecai, who spoke up to help the king. And the king said, "We'll impale him on it." So the pole with the sharp end on it that they were going to stick Mordecai, that Haman wanted to stick Mordecai's body on. Again, this is gruesome. Harbona just, hey, by the way, you know what? There's a big pole with a sharp end on it in front of Haman's house, and he was going to do that to that Mordecai guy that you really, really like. And I think, just saying. And the king goes, you know what? I got an idea. Put Haman on his own pole. There's lessons in there about revenge and anger and things like that, but maybe we'll leave that for the end. But it's interesting that was included in there. So let's see what happens next. So they impaled Haman on the pole he had set up for Mordecai. Then the king's fury subsided. I guess he was okay with the way that worked out. All right, now to chapter 8. Now we've got a problem because this day has still been set, okay, for the destruction of the Jews. Okay, so that same day, King Xerxes gave Queen Esther the estate of Haman, the enemy of the Jews. So King Xerxes says, I tell you what, I'm going to give all of Haman's stuff to Queen Esther. He was an enemy of the Jews. And Mordecai comes into the presence of the king, for Esther had told how he was related to her. So Esther kind of, shares, look, I'm a Jew, Mordecai is my relative, here we go. The king takes off his signet ring, which he had reclaimed from Haman. I don't know if you remember that. He'd given that to Haman so that Haman could write things and make things official when he sent the notice out to all the places where the Jews were to be exterminated. He presents it to Mordecai, another flip of the script, and then Esther appoints him over Haman's estate. So the queen says, okay, Mordecai, now you get Haman's estate. King gave it to me, I'm giving it to you, as well as the ring. So Esther again pleads with the king, falling at his feet and weeping. She begged him to put an end to the evil plan of Haman, which he had devised against the Jews. Now, The king extended the gold scepter to Esther, and she arose and stood before him. If it pleases the king, she said, if he regards me with favor, thinks it's the right thing to do, and if he is pleased with me, let an order be written overruling the dispatches that Haman devised and wrote to destroy the Jews in all the king's provinces. For how can I bear to see disaster fall on my people? How can I bear to see the destruction of my family? King Xerxes replied to Queen Esther and to Mordecai the Jew, because Haman attacked the Jews, I've given his estate to Esther. They've impaled him on the pole he set up. Now write another decree in the king's name in behalf of the Jews, as seems best to you, and seal it with the king's ring. No document written in the king's name and sealed with his ring can be revoked. Okay, you see a problem here. He's calling attention to this rule in the Persian government, where once the king makes a decision and seals it with his ring, it can't be changed. Now, this might sound familiar. King Darius, I believe, when Daniel broke the 30 days of prayer by praying as he always did, and as was his custom, he was thrown to the lion's den, and of course Darius did not want that. Darius cared for Daniel and was very concerned about that, but he couldn't change it because that was the way that they had ruled. That was kind of their, once this is decided, it's decided kind of thing. And so we bump into that a few times in the some of the histories of Israel that involve the Persian kings, and maybe some other situations as well. There's similar types of things. But anyway, so just kind of realize that that's, once it's decided, it's decided. How do I undo that? And so now they've got a dilemma. They've kind of given everybody free rein to exterminate the Jews. So what are they going to do? Well, so at once the royal secretaries were summoned on this 23rd day of the 3rd month. They wrote out Mordecai's orders to the Jews. The 127 provinces, listen to this area, stretching all the way from India to Cush, which would have been Egypt, right? So this is a huge area. There's 127 different districts and provinces. These orders were written in the script of each province, the language of the people, and to the Jews in their own. So they make all of these written orders, and they rush them off to different people. And Mordecai writes in the name of King Xerxes. They seal him up with a ring. They send him by mounted couriers who rode fast horses, especially bred for the king. The king's edict, okay, here's what it actually said, granted the Jews in every city the right to assemble and protect themselves. That's the way around it. To destroy, kill, and annihilate the armed men of any nationality, province who might attack them, their women and children, to plunder the property of their enemies. So, okay, we're going to make it a fair fight, right? We're going to make it a fair fight. We're going to allow the Jews to assemble and have weapons and protect themselves. Okay. You know, I can't undo this other thing, but because that would undermine my authority, but I can make it a fair fight. And so the king does that via Mordecai. So the day appoints for the Jews to do all this on the province on the 13th day of the 12th month. So that gave them, let's see, let's back up here. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be doing this. That was the 3rd month, the 23rd day. Now they're going to do this on the 12th month. So they had a few months together for this. Rebuke or whatever. And so, okay. Copy of the text of the edict was to be issued as law and made known to the people, so the Jews would be ready to avenge themselves on their enemies. Couriers riding these royal horses went out, spurred on by the king's command, and the edict was issued in the citadel of Susa. When Mordecai left the king's presence, he was wearing royal garments of blue and white, a large crown of gold, purple robe, and the city of Susa held a joyous. So, Mordecai went from near death, persona non grata, right, to very high in the king's court. And he was now robed royally, So that might have also sent a signal to everyone who was thinking about attacking. Maybe that's not such a good idea, since the king is married to a Jewess, and her uncle slash cousin is a person in high power. Huh. See, it's there's you can kind of sense the political aspects of this and the wisdom of maybe the way they're handling this. Um, so for the Jews, it was time of happiness, joy, gladness, and honor. They had been kind of redeemed here. So there was joy and gladness wherever this edict came, feasting, celebrating. Many people of other nationalities became Jews. So it really did turn, didn't it? Because fear of the Jews had seized them. So not only are we not going to touch the Jews, we're going to become one. And so here we go, Esther 9. On the 13th day of the 12th month, it's go time. The edict commanded by the king was to be carried out. On this day, the enemies of the Jews had hoped to overpower them, but now the tables were turned, and the Jews got the upper hand over those who hated them. The Jews assembled in all the provinces to attack those determined to destroy them, and no one could stand because of the people of all the other nationalities were now afraid of them. And all the nobles of the provinces, the satraps, governors, kings, administrators helped the Jews. Aha! Because the fear of Mordecai had seized them. So Mordecai had grown in power, and he had become prominent in his palace. His reputation spread. He became more and more powerful. Then the Jews struck down all the enemies with the sword, killing, destroying them, and did what they pleased to those who hated them. In the citadel Susa, the Jews killed and destroyed 500 men. And Susa was where the king was. It was where Mordecai and Esther were. So in that city alone, there were 500 men who tried to, attack the Jews who were killed. So let's see. We're kind of wrapping up here. Maybe some more details here. They also killed these individuals. And these were the 10 sons of Haman. But they didn't lay their hands on the plunder. So the Jews took care of Haman's family, his lineage, but they didn't take any of the plunder of the sons. And the king gets the news. The number of those killed was reported to the king. The king says to Queen Esther, the Jews have killed and destroyed 500 men and the 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now what is your petition? It will be given you. What's your request? So the king's still very favorably disposed to help Esther and her people. If it pleases the king, Esther answered, give the Jews in Susa permission to carry out this day's edict tomorrow also, and let Haman's 10 sons be impaled on poles. Esther don't mess around either. She's a tough lady. She wants Haman's evil plan to be exposed and for his family to be destroyed. And, so she wants her Jewish friends protected. She says, give them permission to do this one more day, and we're going to hang Haman's sons up on these poles. And so that's pretty tough, pretty brutal. So the king commanded be done, and an edict was issued in Susa, and they impaled the 10 sons of Haman. So again, on the 14th day, they put to death 300 more men. So I'm guessing that the fighting wasn't over, but they didn't grab all their stuff. They just killed the men that were trying to kill them. And so they protected themselves, and look at this. They killed 75,000 of the men, but did not lay their hands on their plunder. So it was strictly, they did this to make the point that we are protecting ourselves. We're not trying to gain power. Had they grabbed their stuff too, it might have looked badly. But they basically said, we're going to protect ourselves. We're going to kill these men that are trying to kill us. And so let's see kind of how this wraps up. So this happened on the 13th day of the month of Adar. The 14th, they rested and made it a day of feasting and joy. So feasting and joy, a day of rest. Let's see. Now Susa was different. They had done the 13th and 14th, and on the 15th they rested. Right? They had that extra day of fighting, basically. So that's why, and this is the explanation of the author here, that's why rural Jews, those living in villages, observe the 14th of the month as the day of joy and feasting, a day for giving presents to each other. And Mordecai recorded these events, and he sent letters throughout the provinces. So the people in Susa would have celebrated a different day, the 14th, and the Susa the 15th. So the point is, this became a holiday, and a Jewish holiday. And so let me see, I may have jumped here a little bit. So Mordecai says to have them celebrate annually these days, 14th and 15th, and as the time when the Jews got relief from their enemies, as the month when their sorrow was turned into joy, their mourning into a day of celebration. Observe the days as days of feasting, joy, giving presents of food to one another, and gifts to the poor. So the Jews agreed to continue the celebration they had begun, doing what Mordecai had written to them. For Haman, the enemy of all the Jews, had plotted to destroy them and had cast their pur, P-U-R, and that is the word for lot, for their ruin and destruction. I don't know if you remember earlier in the story, I didn't reference it today in the review, but the reason that this date had been selected was that Haman had cast lots, and this is the day that came up. And so the day that they chose was that Haman was using as his target date for all this was this particular day. And so the Jews actually kind of turned that word lot, pure, into part of the celebration name. And let's see where we are. When the plot came to the king's attention, he had issued written orders against this evil scheme that the Jews should come back onto his own head, and he and his son should be impaled on poles. Aha, here we go. Therefore, these days were called Purim, from the word pure, because of everything written in this letter, because of what they'd seen, what had happened to them. The Jews took it on themselves to establish the custom that they and their descendants and all who join them should without fail observe these 2 days every year in the way prescribed at the time appointed. Let's see if I can get it to. It looks like my screen is freezing. So I'm not, okay. These days should be remembered and observed by every generation, every family, every province, every city. These days of Purim should never fail to be celebrated by the Jews, nor should the memory of these days die out among their descendants. So Queen Esther, daughter of Abihail, we learn her actual father's name, along with Mordecai the Jew, wrote with full authority to confirm this second letter concerning Purim. And Mordecai sent it to all these Jews in these 127 provinces, words of goodwill and assurance to establish these days, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to get into this. Actually, let me back up. In regard to their times of fasting and lamentation, Esther's decree confirmed it, and it was written down in the records. Now, I think we're at number 10. And basically, this is an ode to Mordecai about how great he is and how his greatness is recorded actually in the Persian history books at this time. So Mordecai was second in rank to King Xerxes, preeminent among the Jews, and held in high esteem by his many fellow Jews, because he worked for the good of his people and spoke up for the welfare of all Jews. Okay, so, all right. Sorry, I don't think we've done, maybe some of the shorter books we've read, like Obadiah, but we read the entire book of Esther, save a few verses here and there. But I wanted you to see what a God story this was, where God monitored and was involved and put people in the right places to save his people from being annihilated when they were being disciplined from earlier times when they had been in captivity and for their idol worship and their evil ways. And so God was still caring for them and used Mordecai and Esther to save the people. And, there's all kinds of sub-lessons under this about, I think I referenced anger and maybe hate and violence and other things that are there. Using your position, whether it's at work or in the community, to do good. and not to take advantage of people, and to do right and to do justice. So there's all kinds of great lessons that can be found in Esther, but I think my favorite one that just is the overarching theme is that God is working in our lives, and sometimes even when things seem like horrible and they're about to really, really go downhill fast, God can, as as it says in that book, can turn the tables, and He can do it in a surprising, quick, huge way. And sometimes we get really myopic and focused on the things that are right in front of us and the way we view things, and we think there's no way this could happen or be changed or be fixed or put back together. And sometimes that's true. Maybe God chooses to allow it to stay that way. But here's an example where God chose to intervene, and there were people who chose to be used by God in what the positions they were in to bring about this rescue. And it's celebrated even to this day. Passover and Purim and Hanukkah, these festivals and feasts of the Jews, Purim is still celebrated to this day. In fact, I encourage you to look it up. It's interesting. They retell the story as part of the holiday. They retell this very story that we read. Whenever Esther or Hadassah's name is mentioned, they go, "Yay!" Or Mordecai, they cheer for his name. And whenever Haman's name is mentioned, they hiss and boo. I mean, it's a retelling of a story that energizes them about how God has saved them, and so that gets me excited thinking about how He saved us, and how we should rejoice in telling and celebrating that story too. Well, I've kept you for a while tonight, but I wanted to wrap this up and make sure that we gave this wonderful story all of its due and all of its attention that we could. And I don't know if you've ever heard the entire story before, all the twists and turns and soap opera drama-like movements of it, and all the different ways. It's like, no way could that have just happened. It has to be God. But anyway, I love this story. I love this story so much. And I love more the God who put the story together, and the fact that He allowed it to be recorded in His scriptures, and that He does these same stories in our lives today. So let this give you hope and peace and faith in the God that is writing our story. Well, I will let you go. We will conclude, as I said, next week. I will probably have to record that. I will not be able to do it live, but I've really enjoyed this, and we'll take a couple of weeks off after that. The 26th and the 2nd will be off, and then we'll resume doing something, and I'll announce that in the bulletin and emails and so forth, what we're going to do. But anyway, I hope this has been a blessing. I encourage you to be looking for those God stories in your life, and hope that you are catching those moments and seeing those moments. And also, when you get maybe in moments of despair, you don't give up, because you realize that God can turn the tables extremely quick in your favor. All right, God bless you guys. I hope that you're doing great, and we will talk to you later.